Hello everyone, it's Lisa and I'm here with Shawn Petite's design team. My very last video for you. I'm kind of sad. I wish it could go on and on. But here we are. Let's work on this together. I had a whole bunch of really great stencils picked out in my stash. She provides you with a lot of wonderful stencils and I can't wait to keep creating with it. I'm working on an MDF board and I think this is 9 by 11, and you could see that I showed you it was one that was used already, and I'm using the opposite side, putting down my matte medium, and I'm working with some collage papers, just putting down some music paper that I had in my stash, and then I returned to kind of the basics, and I pulled out some old book pages and some just things that I had in my stash, and I really wanted to use things that I started with. So clearing that up with a old credit card, smoothing out the matte medium, and here my book pages and music is dry, and I'm just using a little bit of antique white and some tan and a dry brush and adding that paint to the background, not totally covering up the background, but giving it a little bit of dimension with the colors of paint and pushing the music notes and things that are real bold to the background, so that we can have something that's a little bit more muted. I have a lot of elements that are going to go on this piece, and my inspiration was definitely my garden this time of year. It has lots and lots of beautiful flowers blooming, and two of my very favorite flowers, I think the most favorite flowers, would be my large daisies and my cone flowers. And they are the inspiration, like I said, for this piece. So I've got that background dry, and now I'm using a little bit of fluid acrylic, and the color is Payne's Gray. And I just wanted to add a little bit of blue to the background because we're going to have flowers. Not to really create a sky per se, but just to have something for those flowers to pop on the color. Just added a little bit of water, going back and forth with my brush and water and getting that background the way I like it. And so just giving it a little bit of a dry here. Everything is dry. And now I wanted to put some alcohol on the piece and kind of pull a little bit of that paint up. This is a great technique that Shawn uses all the time, and you can see it just kind of peels the paint and the paper up a little bit and makes a really great texture. So just using that dry paper towel, and here I've got a little bit of a peel going on, and I thought I would just embrace that and use it to my advantage. So everything is dry again, and now I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. This stencil is called Daisy 1, I believe, and I will have everything listed for you. I have Daisy 1 and Daisy 2. And I'm going to use my white gesso and just a clean makeup sponge, and I'm going to put those daisies in the background here. That stencil I'm using right there is Daisy 2, excuse me, but I will be using Daisy 1 also. So I go ahead and use my gesso and put that through the stencil, creating this really cool background with all of the beautiful daisies. And there's 3 different sizes, so I do the large ones first, then go to the medium, and then go to the small. And if the flowers are not right next to each other, I just continued on, but if they were overlapping, I did give them a little bit of a dry in between, so I didn't pull up the gesso from before. So look how it looks, all those daisies in the background there. Now I'm using a little bit of yellow paint, and it's a Crema Coat and by Delta, and the color is Antique Gold. And I'm going to use a little bit of a sea sponge and go ahead and put the centers of the daisies in. And I'm just kind of blending it out a little bit with my finger. And I noticed that that yellow was a little too bright, so I calmed it down a little bit with some gesso, as you see there on my piece of packaging that I use for my palette a lot of times. And just go ahead and blending it out with my fingers so it's not a perfect circle in the inside of the daisies. And I'm really liking how this background is working out at this point. I'm also going to use a little bit of embossing powder on this piece, and that is something different that I hadn't ever used before on a piece of mixed media. Here I'm using some heavy gesso, and I'm pushing it through that same stencil. I wanted a few just daisies just to really pop out from the background to the foreground here, and using that heavy gesso really added a great bit of texture and another element of surprise to the piece. Just using a palette knife and going through there, using my finger and a dry paper towel to clean up any excess that happens to get on the side. And I needed one more, and just didn't want to have any empty spots. And then I wanted one to go off the edge on the bottom there. There, that looks really good. I knew what I was going to put on that middle right portion. So now everything is dry, and I'm going to use my Daisy 1 stencil now, and I'm going to use a piece of tissue paper, and I'm going to make these into cone flowers. I know the stencil is Daisy 1. That's hard for me to figure out, but I want this layer to be cone flowers, and so I'm using my archival ink. And the colors that I have, that purplish one is Thistle, the green is Library Green, the color of orangish yellow that I have there is Orange Blossom. And then, of course, we're going to have a little bit of brown coming up, and that's Potting Soil. So I'm using my makeup brushes, and I'm just creating a lot of these cone flowers on my tissue paper. And remember that you can turn your stencil over if you want your flower to go in the other direction. Don't be afraid of that. Use those stencils to your advantage. And you will see that I did maybe 4 of the flowers quite bold and bright, and then 2 of the flowers not as bright. I wanted to have some that looked like they were closer up and farther back. So that's why I did that. I wanted some to just be a little bit different. So I think now I will go and finish this off camera, and you'll see the finished product here. So here's my bunch of cone flowers. I'm using water on a brush, clean brush, and just making a line of water there going around the cone flowers and separating them. and trying not to let my fan blow them away in my craft room here, and being careful not to rip the tissue paper too much. Now that you have them separated, you could go back in with your wet brush and get a little bit closer if you would like. I like to get as close as possible so you don't have all of that tissue paper hanging off. But be careful, because the more you work with it, the easier it gets to rip. And you see that my fan is blowing things all over, so I do turn that off so that I don't have that problem anymore. Just remember, when you're looking at your project at this point, if you are going to try this, that you're going to have all kinds of other elements going on your piece. You're going to come back with your charcoal, you're going to come back with paint, I came back with my new soft pastels, which I absolutely love. I call them my box of chocolates. Now here's where I'm using my potting soil archival ink and another of Shawn's stencils that I absolutely love, and it's called Background Words. It's one that I just purchased, and I never knew how much I loved it. I've used it like 3 or 4 different projects in the last 2 months, and it just has really great font for backgrounds. And this little area that I'm using, it says fear less, hope more, whine less, breathe more, talk less, say more, hate less, love more, and all good things are yours. So isn't that just so appropriate for the times that we're going through right now? I just every day just praying to God that we can get through this and we can all get back to some type of normal. When I see my friends on the weekends, or if we get together, which we try not to, but you have to. We're human. We need that human contact. We always just say we just never knew how good we had it. Before we took things for granted. So maybe this is our awakening that's supposed to say, yeah, you shouldn't have been complaining before you had it so good. I'm not sure. That's just my 2 cents worth. But here, look at this background. Super, super duper cool, isn't it? So we're going to give that a quick little dry, and I'm going to come back, and you know what I'm going to do next. I know you know. You could guess. We're going to put down that wash, and I always use my burnt umber and water, and usually I have a little jar, but I was kind of impatient today, I guess, and I did it right on my plastic. That paint on that piece of packaging that I'm using as a palette, the paint underneath was dry, so I thought, well, I'm just going to go for it. And I'm adding water, and I'm just going to put that wash over the top of the piece, and this gives the greatest dimension. It pulls those daisies out, it pushes the words back a little bit. I just love this technique, and I'm so thankful for all of the things that Shawn has taught me. And we're going to give it a spray with water, and we're going to let it run and just be so beautiful in all of those nooks and crannies, and just make such a beautiful background. I really, really enjoyed this piece. Just using a dry paper towel there and going back and forth until we have it the way that we would like it. See where that piece of paper ripped off there, and you can see the background? Really cool. I love that. So there, I have it the way I like it, and I'm going to give it a dry, and everything is dry here. So now we're going to work on a sentiment. And the one I pulled out is from a sheet of sentiments that you can get in Shawn's shop. And it's just different sayings, and the one that I thought was appropriate for right now was do what makes you happy. I'm going to put a little bit of my brown paint over that with some water so that it is not so bright white. I wanted it to match the background a little bit. So do what makes you happy. I think that's very important. And, you know, it's very important for what we're all going through right now is that, you know, being happy and doing what we can for our friends and family and neighbors and just taking care of each other. Now I'm just putting down those tissue paper cone flowers that I had made with my archival ink, and I'm just kind of seeing where I would like them. So I think I have an idea here, and I'm going to use my matte medium and go ahead and give a nice layer of matte medium underneath the tissue paper, and I'm going to go over the top also so that that tissue paper kind of melts to the background and holds down that cornflower, and no one will be the wiser. You'll never even be able to see it in the end. So I kind of wanted this one to go off the edge a little bit. My paintbrush is dry and a soft paintbrush so that I don't rip that tissue paper, and I am being quite careful. It looks like I'm going really fast, but I've sped up the video so that you didn't have to watch this go real slow. So I decided to put the two kind of faded ones over to the right and then the four bolder ones over to the left. And the reason I decided to do that was because I knew I was going to put a rusty coneflower as the focal point, and I wanted those coneflowers to the right to be kind of way in the background. Just putting my last ones down here, and it's all right that I'm going over those daisies that I put with the heavy gesso. It looks really, really great. Don't worry about it. We're gonna have everything all fixed up in the end. And then just putting that last one down. Doesn't that look just great? All right, now I need to stop messing with it. I wanted to put down my sentiment, and I just cut it so I could do two different levels there. So do what makes you happy. And I'm using my matte medium to put that down. And when that is dry, we're going to use this Wow embossing powder in a color that is called, where did I put that? Here it is. It is called Rusty Copper. Now, how I got the idea of doing this is kind of strange. This last weekend, my husband and I were on a motorcycle ride, and we were out in the countryside, and at this person's house, they had this great big flower. I mean, it must have been 3, maybe 4 feet wide and maybe 6 feet tall, of a big cone flower, and it was just made out of that rusty tin. So I thought, oh, wouldn't that be neat if I could duplicate that? So here I'm shaking up my Wow embossing powder called Crusty Copper. Yeah, crusty, not rusty. And I put down some embossing ink, And this one is by Wow. It's called Mixed Media Embossing ink with brush. It has kind of like a brush, like a nail polish brush. And I put that through the stencil. Then I put the embossing powder over the top, and then I heated it with my heat tool, and it gave this really cool rusty looking flower as the focal point. Love it. I absolutely love it. Now here I'm showing you that I mixed up some paint, and I didn't really have the best color of cone flower to match. But again, remember, we're going to go back over the top of these things when they're dry with our charcoal pencil, maybe our Stabilo All pencil. We're going to add our stems with paint. And then I said I'm going to use my soft pastels. And in the end, if you don't have the exact right color, you can recreate with the process of using all of those different elements. And so that's exactly what I did. I had some brown, and I'm going to mute that bright fuchsia color down, and I'm just trying to mix to get the right color, because the one that I had there that I just painted with seemed really, really bright. I mean, like neon pink bright, and I didn't really want that. So you just keep playing with it, and you just keep testing out the colors and keep on going. You can always add another layer of paint. You can always fix it. So here I was using some real light gesso with the fuchsia and making a light pink and creating the leaves of that coneflower with my brush. And you just keep going and creating until you have it the way you like it, and you will know. You'll know when you're finished. The piece will tell you. Now, I want to thank Shawn so much for having me on the design team. I remember when I made the design team way back last year. So much has happened in this year. I just cannot believe it. And I believe that being on Shawn's design team gave me the courage to go ahead and quit my job, which I did in August. And I had a wonderful, wonderful year all planned with craft shows and workshops and all types of things coming up. But, you know, things happen, life happens, and everything has been canceled. So I will look forward to possibly doing those things next year. But I just wanted to let Shawn know that I am so very grateful for this opportunity to work with you, and I have learned so much, and I'm so grateful for you. So here I decided to switch to my Stabilo pencil, and I'm using that with some water. Now sometimes it gets really, really black, so I'm using my damp paper towel just to dab it up a little bit. Remember, the Stabilo pencil is water soluble, so you can take it off. And I've got water up at the top there and my brush, and I just keep dabbing it in there, making it all work until it's the way I like it. It all comes together in the end. Here I'm back to my General's 6B Extra Soft charcoal pencil, and back and forth and working on it, dabbing it up a little bit if it gets too dark, back and forth. I think Shawn says it's always a dance when you go back and forth, and you just keep going until you feel that you have everything done. Now be sure to check me out on my channel. I have a YouTube channel. Also, I have Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook page. And I have a really great Facebook group that I have. And it's called Everything Paper and Glue. And that's a real fun little group. So here I was looking for some colors to pull out of my soft pastels. So that reminded me, don't get too crazy on these flowers because we're going to finish them with these beautiful soft pastels. And here I have one color of green, and I'm just adding that to it and blending it with my finger, and not being, you know, too crazy with it. It's art. It's supposed to be, you know, beautiful and fun, and it's making me happy, so I'm doing what makes me happy. So I like to say that this box of soft pastels felt like a box of chocolates when I got it. It was just like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to use it? And absolutely, I've been trying to use it on almost everything I do these days in mixed media. I would like to incorporate it into my card making, so maybe I'll try and work on that in the near future, because boy, these are, what do you say, the cat's meow, huh? I just love them. So many beautiful colors. And you can see how the comb flowers are turning out now. Just absolutely beautiful. And when I'm pulling it towards me there, I'm actually blowing off some of that chalk. I didn't want to smudge too much of it. I wanted just to kind of blow off any excess. Now I'm using a brown underneath the flowers here and some of the petals, and I'm using my application tool that I have from my pan pastels, and it really makes an awesome shadow underneath those leaves and underneath the flowers. So I really liked how that technique turned out, and it just made the whole thing pop. Those flowers gave it such depth and dimension. Here I'm using my white pastel pencil and just adding some highlights there and blending it a little bit with my finger, but kind of leaving it very bright white. So the brown underneath and the bright white on top really makes this piece pop. I have lots of shots, photos at the end for you. So please stay to the end and check them out. Thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you again so much, Shawn, for having me. I am sure that we will keep in touch, and I would just love to thank you so much. I owe you a lot. And we'll talk again soon. I'm adding that black border like Shawn always does, and I just have to do it too because I love the technique. Enjoy the photos. We'll talk soon. Leave comments below. I would love to hear from you. And I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you again. Thank you. Thank you for watching.